This music kicks ass. I always love it when people diss the Sega Genesis for its music. And yeah, sure, in a lot of multi-port games, the Sega Genesis got the short end of the stick. But games like this just go to show you that if the composer knows what they're doing, not just musically, but really you have to understand the technical side of the Sega Genesis. Now, I used to always think the same guy that did the music for the Streets of Rage games, Yuzo Koshiro, and I probably can't pronounce that right. Now, a lot of people who are into video game music will know Yuzo Koshiro. He did so many games, and a lot of them have memorable music. Revenge of Shinobi, Streets of Rage, Actorizer on the Super Nintendo. He did a lot of the 8-bit Sonic the Hedgehogs, like on the Sega Master System and the Game Gear. And that's probably why I thought he did Sonic the Hedgehog on the Genesis. The guy that did the music in the Sonic the Hedgehog games on the Sega Genesis, Masato Nakamura. Yeah, once again, I probably pronounced that wrong. But the guy that did the music in this game really isn't that well known. He's, as far as I can tell, I mean, doesn't look like he's done a lot of video game music, but he is a bass player. And I think that has something to do with the music in this, because it's really that jazzy, poppy, slappy bass in Sonic the Hedgehog that I think makes me like this music the most. This game was released first in Japan in November 21st of 1992, and in North America 3 days later, November 24th, 1992. Now, this game was developed by members of Sonic Team from Japan, but they were actually working in the United States for Sega Technical Institute. So this game was developed by Sega Technical Institute, and I guess the first Sonic game to be developed in the United States, even though it was all the Japanese members from Sonic Team. Obviously, this is the sequel to the original Sonic the Hedgehog, and this game, of course, sold very well. This game sold over 6.3 million copies, making it the second best-selling game on the Sega Genesis. Part of the reason why this game sold so many copies is because it originally was offered as a mail away. You'd send your UPC code when you bought a Sega Genesis, and you could get a copy of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in the mail. And eventually it was just packed in with the Sega Genesis, just like Sonic the Hedgehog 1. Sonic the Hedgehog was really Sega's first big mascot for the Genesis, and they really wanted the Genesis to take off, so they knew that packing in Sonic the Hedgehog was a good idea. I think at this point with Sonic 2, they probably really didn't need to bother packing it in. Sonic the Hedgehog was obviously majorly popular, and they would have made even more money just selling Sonic the Hedgehog 2 separately. So the fact they gave this away with the UPC code in the first place is pretty awesome. Really, I don't think Sega needed to do that at all. Obviously, the biggest difference between this game and the original is the addition of Tails. Now, you can play as Tails if you want. You can go into the options and pick to play as Tails. But the cool thing is, when you play as Sonic by the default, Tails just follows you around. Another addition, of course, is the ability to do the spin dash. It's almost funny after you've played enough Sonic the Hedgehog games to go back to the very first and realize that you can't do the spin dash, because it seems like the spin dash is something that would have been in there from the beginning, but yeah, in the first Sonic the Hedgehog, no spin dash. So obviously that was a nice addition to this one here. Now this is a game that most of you probably played back in the day, but the truth is, and some of you know this about me, is that I did not own a Sega Genesis back in the day. I bought my very first Sega Genesis ever in 2005. And I really haven't played Sonic the Hedgehog 2 that much. I've always played Sonic the Hedgehog 1, and up until just recently, I probably would have told you that Sonic the Hedgehog 1 was my favorite Sonic the Hedgehog game. I never really got into Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. I know a lot of people like Sonic 3 and Knuckles the best. But right about now, I think Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is my favorite Sonic game, period. I never played this game back in the day, I never beat this game back in the day, I never seen anyone beat this game or play this game back in the day. So some of these levels I'm seeing now for the first time. There's a really good variety in the levels. Some of the levels look gorgeous. Aquatic Ruin Zone. Wow. Now, I've said it before, I'm no programmer, but the developers of Sonic the Hedgehog really did a good job at getting past some of the perceived color limitations on the Sega Genesis. The Sega Genesis isn't supposed to display more than 64 colors on screen at a time, but good developers use a technique called shadow and highlight, and they can basically change the properties of this as the scan line's drawing down basically down the TV. Obviously it's really tricky to do. It probably takes a little bit more CPU utilization, but once again, I'm not a programmer. I just know that most games don't do it quite as good as this because, well, although it's hard to say for sure, I have to think that this level in particular really looks like it's going beyond that limitation of 64 colors on screen at a time. And if anyone knows for sure how many colors this game or this level or some of the other Sonic the Hedgehog games can actually pump out on screen at a time, put it in the comments, because I think that's pretty cool. This level just really shines. There's also a lot of parallax scrolling in the background. Basically, in front of the mountains, it looks like you're up high above the tree line in the background. And there's a good, 5, 6, 7 layers of those small trees in the background that all have a different speed for the parallax scrolling on them, and it really gives a good, feel of the depth that you're up high, and that's really far off in the background. And once again, it makes the level just really look great overall. Now, most of the boss fights in Sonic 2 are pretty easy, especially once you figure out the pattern. Most of them have a little gimmick about them. I mean, in this one here, Dr. Robotnik, every time he hits one of these totem pole things with his hammer, then there's going to be an arrow shoot out of that side. So you always know what side the arrow's going to shoot out of, and then you got to use the arrow as a step to be able to jump high enough and hit him. It might take you a minute to figure out, but it's really not that hard once you figure them out. So like I said, I've never beat this game before. I've never really sat down and actually gave this game a good run through. To be honest, this is pretty much the first time I've seen a lot of these levels. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of variety in the levels. I mean, from one zone to the next, there's no repetition, there's no confusing one level with another. They all have a really unique look to them. Different enemies, different backgrounds, different colors. Definitely a good looking game overall, like I said. Now, Now there's a lot of bonus levels, and basically to get the bonus levels, what you have to do is collect at least 50 rings on a level, and when you get to a checkpoint, there'll be a certain point where you can jump through some little flickering stars on the screen. When you do that, you go to the bonus round. The bonus round gets you the ability to get a Chaos Emerald. If you get all 7 Chaos Emeralds, you'll unlock Supersonic. When you have Supersonic and you collect at least 50 rings, you actually become invincible. You get super speed and acceleration. I assume it's really cool, but truth is I can't do it. I cannot get all 7 Chaos Emeralds. So, if you can get Supersonic, then you're basically the Superman. You're Super Saiyan. If you can get Supersonic in this game, you're awesome. I'm not that good. I'm lucky if I can beat the game. Struggling to get through it. I can get a few Chaos Emeralds, but I haven't been able to get all 7. But nonetheless, these bonus levels themselves look pretty cool. They kind of got a pseudo 3D effect going on. Breaks up the game a little bit. The bonus levels in Sonic were always pretty neat. Alright, now I'm getting near the end. I think we're on like the second last level here. Hopefully I can beat this game for you. But I have a feeling I'm going to run into trouble. Trouble like this level. This level is like a maze. You really got to figure out where to go. And of course, if it's your first time on this level, expect to die just trying to figure out where to go. You're gonna... Yeah, you fall off, you're dead, first of all, so rings don't help you. And I got stuck on this one part here. I tell you, I couldn't figure it out. I don't know if it was the game glitching, because I tried running into this catapult, I tried not running into the catapult, I tried jumping at the last second as the catapult's pushing you. It's supposed to pretty much do it automatically. I don't know what I was doing wrong. Honestly, I must have died here about 15 times. I had a lot of continues, I had a lot of men, extra lives ranked up. Especially from that casino level, where if you noticed, you can really rank up the rings. But I wasted them all here. Luckily, at the last minute, my girlfriend came over. And I told her I'm stuck at this part, I've died like 15 times. And somehow she did it. I don't know what she did. She grew up with the Sega Genesis. She grew up with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. She can beat this game with her eyes closed. So she managed to get by this part for me and get to Metal Sonic, but unfortunately she died on Metal Sonic. And because I wasted so many lives, she probably could have done it if she had more lives, obviously, and more continues. But of course I wasted them all. So I ruined it for us. No ending. But hey, I guess that kind of works out, because it would have been a spoiler anyways.